You got Fauci here, who certainly was very talented at that. Don't forget, right? He made an appearance on The View this week. And first of all, it was sort of nauseating, totally nauseating, listening to Whoopi Goldberg, who, by the way, I don't think is going to be long for that job once Disney sells ABC, mark my words. Anyway, she just laid out the red carpet. She couldn't stop fawning over the guy. We're going to play that, but I also got to show you what he said, which I'm just like, do these people have amnesia? Watch Whoopi.
So before we start, people are so glad to see you. They are so glad to see you. So thank you for coming on the show and for everything you've done from the very beginning. It's extraordinary, and you're no worse for the wear. You look good.
Thank you.
You say empathy has always guided you as a physician and a public servant, but there's also a Latin phrase that has consistently come up for you, and I'd love you to share it and tell everybody what it means.
Well, when I was getting my education in high school, Latin and Greek was an important part of our classical training. It was actually at Regis High School, a few blocks from here. It was a Jesuit school. And one of the things that they mentioned to us when things got down and you felt that the world was caving in on you was illegitimate non carborundum, which means don't let the bastards wear you down.
Okay, all right. So Anthony Fauci making the rounds, and I just think that this is kind of interesting because it's like, sorry guys, you know what? There's tape. There's tape now. I specifically remember Anthony Fauci on CBS News telling John LaPook on 60 Minutes that, nope, you didn't need masks. You didn't need to wear a mask. This was early on because apparently they were hoarding all these masks. And yet, here's what he's saying these days as he pumps his book on The View with Joy Behar.
Democracy, it's very threatening, I think.
It's in jeopardy. It's in jeopardy, I think. Yeah. So you dedicate a chapter in the book to your dealings with Trump. It's called, the chapter's called "He Loves Me, He Loves Me Not," and you describe some angry, ranting, expletive-filled phone calls where he would berate you and flatter you in the same breath. I'm wondering, you just said you worked with 7 other presidents. Did any one of them ever speak to you the way he does, or did?
No, of course not. Not even close.
Wow.
You know what I meant by "loves me, loves me not"? You know, early on in the beginning, you know, he is an engaging character, and we had a certain rapport with each other. I was trying to figure out what it was. I think is that 2 guys from New York City. You know, he was from Queens, I was from the Bronx, and we kind of had that, you know, New York, he calls it swagger, with each other. That was fine. And all that was really good in the beginning until, you know, he wished and hoped that the outbreak would disappear because it clearly was getting in the way of both the economy and then, as a result of that, into the election cycle. Yeah. So he started to say things that actually were not true. And I just felt that I had a responsibility for my own personal and professional integrity, but also my responsibility to you, to the American public. So I had to contradict him. That was very difficult for me to do that. Once I did that, then things got really dicey because I don't think he went away from the fact that we did have a good relationship, but he was really very upset about the fact that I had to get up and say, you know, no, it's not going to disappear like magic, and no, hydroxychloroquine doesn't work no matter what Laura Ingraham is telling you. I mean, that's the problem.
Yeah, well, he doesn't like it if you disagree with him. That's why a lot of his cohorts in the Republican Party are kowtowing to him, because they know it displeases him.
Right.
You know?
Well, speaking about hydroxychloroquine, countless Americans lost loved ones to COVID. My husband lost both of his parents, 2 doctors, within 3 days of each other from the pandemic. Thank you. We remember those pandemic briefings. I remember the injection of bleach, perhaps, the hydroxychloroquine, dangerous recommendations. You were particularly disturbed, I read. by his refusal to wear a mask.
Yeah.
Now, what was this time like for you, having to contradict the President of the United States? And what should everyone know about how he handled the crisis? Because I blame him for my in-law's death.
Yeah. Well, you know, the people who became very angry with me among his staff, people like Peter Navarro and Mark Meadows and others, thought that I was doing that because I had some sort of antipathy to the president, which I did not. And it was very painful for me. I have a great deal of respect for the presidency of the United States of America. I've served 7 presidents, so it wasn't like, wow, isn't this cool that I'm contradicting the president? It was very, very painful, but I had to do it. With regard to the masks, the thing that was the problem is that when the CDC came out and made the recommendations that when you're indoors, we should be wearing masks. That was at the time that the infections were going like that.
Right.
And when he got up and said, well, it's a recommendation, but I'm not going to do it, I choose not to do it, I considered that a missed opportunity to use the bully pulpit of the presidency to get people to do things that was for their own safety. You know,
here's what I will say about that. I don't entirely disagree with that idea in that, you know, he could have had the MAGA masks and everything. And then it could have been sort of, you know, to advertising his presidency, if you would. However, Anthony Fauci, who, by the way, has totally jumped the shark, you know, trying to cash in at this moment, even though I think he was like one of the most highly paid people in the administration. He was the guy who told us over and over again in the initial stages of this that you didn't need the masks. I mean, the contradiction and the amnesia that goes on, it's really, really nauseating. He's on record saying that. I also spoke recently with a nurse in the New York City area who told me they were telling her staff in February, no, you shouldn't be wearing masks because we want you to be able to engage with your patients and they need to be able to see you, etc. I mean, that was just a bunch of cover because what were they doing behind the scenes? They were hoarding masks because they were really, really concerned. So they weren't giving us the information, the correct information on time in any way. And what consequently happened is that people lost more and more faith in the government. And when you lose faith in those institutions, you know what? It's hard to get them back. It really is. And Joe Biden has single-handedly managed to erode all faith in our institutions. I mean, in his own little way, he keeps taking shots at the Supreme Court as well, because somehow he thinks he's going to grandfather everybody who went to college and still has debt that they haven't paid off, whether they graduated or not. Somehow it's going to be your problem. You're going to have to pay that stuff off. And the Supreme Court is wrong for actually saying, no, you know what? That's not something that you can do. It's really quite troubling.